Greetings, YouTube. I was watching an episode of MST3K recently, and they had a short before the film. They often did that when the films themselves weren't very long. A lot of the older films were very short, like 70 minutes, you know what I mean? So this short dealt with good driving habits. And to get their point across, they gave this example of a guy who didn't have good driving habits. And eventually he did his bad driving habits to the point where he ran himself off the road. And massive crash, car to the side, on its side, and he was dead. And then he is collected by his guardian angel, who apparently failed miserably to guard him. And then the two of them go to a celestial traffic court, where the guardian angel tries to explain, I tried again and again and again and again. Every time I had even a second not paying attention to him. Apparently doing this was very stressful for the angel. Apparently angels have stress. And he would do bad things, and he did them repeatedly. And he would learn occasionally, most often when he had a near-death experience or he nearly killed someone else. But he definitely didn't learn enough, fast enough. Oh, I have a cat. It's really being a pain at the moment. Sorry. Because at age 36, married with like 2 kids, he got himself killed, and was now hoping to get a reprieve, and it didn't look good for him. But the judge in the celestial traffic court decided that the guardian angel, who'd been at this job for 15 years, since the guy had gotten his driver's license apparently at age 21, decided that he had done his time. And you discovered that he himself had been a bad driver. And his punishment was to become the guardian angel of another driver and guide him or her to a future of safe driving. And when it was discovered, when he was decided that this guardian angel was going to be free, I'm unbound, I'm free, and he was all happy, and he took off. And which is where the judge decided that it was up to the viewers of this short to decide if the bad driver in the short was to be judged. And of course, it was all about, how would you judge this? Have you been a good driver? How would you judge your own driving? Yada yada yada. You get it. But what it did was it. To be a 20-year-old cat and have no idea what you want in life. What it inspired me to think of is the difference between a bound and unbound ghost. Now, the concept of a bound ghost is familiar to most of us. The idea that a ghost haunts a place or a person or maybe even an event, and they are tied to that place or object or person or event. So when something happens again, the ghost shows up. Or they're stuck inside a building, they can't escape. Or they haunt a family lineage from generation to generation. You get the idea. But the ghost is bound to something, and there's no way of separating the ghost from that binding. So we're pretty familiar with this. We've encountered it. You know, you're supposed to help ghosts pass on when usually they're supposed to have been here because they had unfinished business. But once they're free, they can go about the next stage. Oh, the chaos and destruction. They can go about the next stage. And the next stage for... I'll have to get that later. The next stage for this traffic ghost was who knows what. But most people think that it means you now go on to your final resting place, which is probably going to be a positive because you stayed around to finish your business. It's hard to imagine that a ghost that's bound to finish their business is then going to be punished for having finished their business. But who knows? The vagaries of the celestial, the divine court system are being very complex and difficult for us mere mortals to understand. But what happens when a ghost becomes unbound? When they are now free, but they don't pass on? What do they do? Now, I've touched on this in the past when I had a ghost named Samuel. when I had a ghost named Samuel that had been murdered by his stepmother, and he didn't know what the closure is for him to pass on. So he had been stuck as an unbound ghost in this world until he could complete that. And he didn't have any memory of what happened. He didn't know how he had died until he could figure out what happened to him. And he could finally get revenge upon either her or at least reveal her crime, hopefully before she died. There would be no closure for him. He could not pass on. But if a ghost has no unfinished business, but they don't pass on, what do they do? Now, all of us have probably figured you'd become the ultimate voyeur. You could peruse history over time. You could see the intimacies of human life, absolute everywhere, just walking through walls, seeing what you want, doing what you want. Now, most ghosts have no physical interaction with this world, but some ghosts, as they get better and better at being a ghost, you've seen that in the movie Ghost, and I touched upon it in the video I did about Samuel, being that a ghost that practices learns or relearns how to interact with the physical world. So over time, these types of ghosts could in fact interact with the physical world to one degree or another, probably a very minor at first, manifest themselves physically, being heard, first probably a ghostly apparition, then eventually appearing as they did in life. Maybe they can change their form. Maybe they can be chimeral in that respect. They can shape shift in their, or change their image so that they look like anyone they want to look like. Maybe they borrow the appearance of other people and they become that person. But over time, maybe they can be heard. Maybe they can actually touch things. They can move things. Not as well or in the same manner that they did in life, but they can still do it. And the OGL Steampunk's book I was looking at for the inspiration for Samuel touched on that well. There were different ways for ghosts to interact with the world, and some of them involved learning how to essentially manipulate ectoplasm and moving objects and picking things up and being able to use them both as they were intended to do and as weapons or defensive objects. So I still find it fascinating about the idea of an unbound ghost. Is there any way to know an unbound ghost is being in the vicinity in a mystical world where ghosts are common, bound or unbound, without having some kind of mystical sense or spell casting or psychic ability or psionic ability, if you differentiate those two things? They do that in Pathfinder. They do that. Psychics and psionics psychic powers and psionic powers are actually separate. Psionics being a type of spell casting, psionics being a spell point system. So they're separate. They do different things. Some systems make that differentiation and some don't. But it just got me thinking, and I like the idea of the unbound ghost, both as an NPC and as a player character. What was the Michael J. Fox movie where he played Frighteners, where he played the ghost detective, the supernatural detective with some ghost assistants, people who had not passed on to the next stage of their existence. So he was able to utilize them. I don't want a cat. Utilize them in it to help him both convince people they needed to be helped and then made them go away. He was scamming people. No ifs, ands, or buts. He was a con man. But he was a relatively harmless con man because he was going after rich people. And I can understand that. But I like the idea of the unbound ghost. The options are wide and varied. So I thought I would ask those who are watching this video, what would you do with the concept of the unbound ghost? Where would you apply it in your game? Would you have one haunting the party? Would you use it as someone who really feels that there is something they have to finish. And the Unbound ghost is contacting the party to help them. And you need to help me finish this process, finish this thing so I can pass on. What if they're wrong? What if they finish the thing and they're still here? That they're between the worlds forever. Just because the ghost thinks they need to close something up, wrap something up nice and neat with a bow on top. And it was an event that they had something to do with when they were alive. Doesn't mean that that actually is going to set them free. It doesn't mean they know everything. They could be wrong. And sometimes a player character or non-player character who has a really deeply held belief and is proved wrong can be really damn interesting. So let's talk about unbound ghosts and how we would use them. And I hope that you are not being haunted by an old cranky cat.